What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing something that is fairly new as far as I know, at least on the internet. Anyone who's been with me for a while knows that the black-eyed kids are absolutely the most terrifying phenomenon to me. I just can't get enough about them. I'm so fascinated with them, constantly doing more research. I do have two BEK videos of stories, including Steve Stockton's story on my channel, but those are about to come down. I'm going to combine them. I'm actually rebooting, as many of you probably know, a lot of my older videos. I'm almost done doing that. So I was going to cover the BEK and the white-eyed kids, the WEK, together, but I decided not to do that because from just a cursory search of the WEK, the white-eyed kids, I've actually learned that they're not the same as the black-eyed kids. Now, obviously, they're not the same because they have white eyes and not black, but if you do just a cursory search or a cursory investigation of the white-eyed kids, you'll find that they are very similar to the black-eyed kids. They do the same things, they cause the same feelings. Only if you look deeper and actually go down any number of rabbit holes, from which I've managed to come back from all of them, because trust me, I went there. Every single one that I found, I've actually found if you dig a little bit deeper, they're not like the black-eyed kids at all. The only similarity that I can find is that they have something weird with their eyes. So depending on your research, depending on what you believe, you may think or you may have found something that you believe on the internet during your research and investigating that is quite contrary to what I'm about to tell you today. But I can promise you that my information is based on fact as best as I can get facts in the paranormal community. I saw two things. I saw they were just like the BEK, except they have white eyes. And I saw something completely different that I decided to roll with because it just felt more real and more believable to me. And also, I think I may have made a connection that I haven't heard anyone else make yet. So if you're on the team of believing that the black-eyed kids or the white-eyed kids and the black-eyed kids are the same thing, that's fine. Still watch this video. Comment why you believe that down below. And I hope you'll still watch this and see another opinion, another side of things from something that I think is very true and very believable. Of course, the jury's still out. My mental jury is still out, as it always is. This is just the beginning, again, just like with the alien hybrid program, of my research into this topic. So some of the things I say may change, and I'll explain if something is different, like in the next video that I said now. It just means I came across something that contradicted something now. This is a new phenomenon. It's very rare that I come across something so fresh and new to discuss. So there's not a lot there except for like the cursory and like periphery kind of stuff that you get that I don't really believe is true. So without further ado, let's get into the white-eyed kids, or the WEK. So I couldn't find a Wikipedia page exactly for the white-eyed kids, but I did find something on Wiki Fandom, and it said, quote, "The white-eyed children are a race of humanoid beings who bear a few similarities to the infamous black-eyed children, but they also share several contrasts with them. So much so, some paranormal investigators believe that they are the true masters of the black-eyed kids," end quote. That one point fascinated me, and I found a little bit of research on it of why people think they may be the masters and how they drew that conclusion, but I'm not going to be covering that today because that goes super duper deep, and I just have too much information to get through first before I can come to any kind of conclusion on that. But trust me, this is really interesting. So let me tell you what I dug up just from a little bit of a cursory search. Their home world, so where they're from, is listed as, quote, presumably Earth, end quote. And I gotta say, I definitely beg to differ that opinion. I know I'm not alone in thinking that the BEK have no home anywhere in, around, or near Earth, and I believe the same is for the white-eyed kids. I mean, if they did have some kind of home here, then why would they constantly be needing to get into our houses? I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious, but not really. That makes sense to me. There's something that they need in human beings. I don't even believe it has anything to do with our homes or our vehicles. So I don't think that either one of these have their homes on Earth. They're definitely otherworldly, presumably evil, and unquestionably supernatural. The WEK's abilities are listed as, quote, mind control, teleportation, brainwashing, and hypnosis, end quote. The white-eyed kids are known to knock on the doors of apartments and residential homes, just like their dark-eyed counterparts, but that happens very rarely. The differences between the two, though, are very striking, and while the WEK are known sometimes to knock on the doors of the residential homes like the BEK, it's not all the time. With all that being said, and I want to know your guys' opinion at the end of the day, at the end of this video, which you would prefer. I would take a white-eyed kid encounter any day of the week over a black-eyed kid, I think. Again, mental jury's still out, but after this video, at the end of the day, which one would you prefer if you had to choose? A white-eyed kid encounter or a black-eyed kid encounter? Let's find out the details. Unlike the black-eyed kids, the white-eyed kids do not need permission to get into your home. The black-eyed kids knock on your door, they beg to be let in. If you don't let them in and you don't want to and you tell them no, they start getting really angry, really kind of obnoxious, really mean, evil looking. This is usually when they'll reveal their eyes to try and scare you. They do ask politely at first, but as you know, like, they cause this really deep sense of kind of profound fear and dread, which overtakes the person that they're encountering or that's encountering them most of the time before they even approach the house, or as they're approaching the house, the person inside has no idea they're coming to the door, and all of a sudden their animals are acting strange or like super terrified, and they get this like kind of primal fear, this kind of, Brian Bethel said it best when he said he had this primal fear and something inside saying, run, you fool. That always stuck with me, because after reading about several of these accounts, I definitely agree with that with the BEK. If you encounter them, run, don't walk the other way. We're going to find, though, that with the white-eyed kids, you may not be able to do that if you wanted to. And that's a really scary thought to me. It's also kind of common knowledge now that the black-eyed kids travel in small groups, usually 2, sometimes 3, and every once in a while there will be just one of them, but they're almost never alone. The white-eyed kids are almost exactly the opposite. They are almost always by themselves. There's usually just one of them, but there can be up to 3. I don't think there's been any, as far as my research goes, there hasn't been any encounters where there's been more than 3, and it's extremely rare to find more than 1. It does happen, but not that often. The white-eyed kids tend to be the solo wolf pack, if you will, of whatever dimension or realm they come from. Also, while it seems like the BEK prefer to do their business in mostly domestic areas, due in large part to the fact they like to hang out in parking lots and near residential homes and businesses, apparently, the white-eyed kids have a different hunting ground entirely. While it's true, yeah, like I said, sometimes they'll appear in residential homes or in parking lots of businesses, and yes, I said appear in, and we'll get to that later. They're most often encountered in isolated areas of the woods and mainly and more specifically campgrounds and on hiking trails. You know where I'm going with this? The WEK don't need to knock, however. They don't need to ask or demand or beg to gain entry. They simply just appear. They show up and they seemingly hypnotize the victim into doing whatever they want done, which is still a huge mystery, because here's the scary part. Nobody ever remembers what they wanted. The focus on this video, as short as it's going to be, and the reason it's so short is because this is just, as I said, the very beginning of my research, but I wanted to give you guys something to look forward to, something to chew on, something to think about, something to wait for, right? It's a theory I've come up with in researching the white-eyed kids, and also with all of the extensive research I've done on the missing people when researching the Fae, like the missing people in the woods. You guys know I do the Fae theory videos for missing persons and mysteries, and I'm also writing a book that'll be out this summer on the missing and Fae theory. So with all of that research about taking the Fae out of it for this video and just talking about the missing people, you know that I've done extensive research on the subject, and I've come across an idea, a theory, that I believe is my own, which makes me wonder if the WEK could be connected somehow to the missing people in the woods. After all, their main domain is isolated areas of the woods, specifically campgrounds. Could they be lurking in the shadows, waiting for some unsuspecting camper or small child to wander off to either use the bathroom or go for a hike or just have some privacy in the woods? Perhaps a camper or a hiker will want to go off alone and pick some of those sweet and luscious looking berries. We know the Fae will take care of them once they get to that point, but what of those who never do? Could it be the white-eyed kids? Let's take a closer look. The witnesses, or victims as I like to call them, who have had encounters with these beings, for the most part, don't feel any type of dread or bad, not even any kind of odd feeling that we always seem to hear about when people encounter or are about to encounter the BEK, right? That overwhelming feeling of dread that I talked about earlier. This doesn't mean anything, though, at least in my opinion, as far as their intent. Maybe they just have better magic or a better ability to hide that part of themselves or somehow shield themselves from our primal or basic human instinct, our survival instinct, which brings on those feelings and tells us deep down inside, run. These whites are also known to have much stronger abilities when it comes to hypnosis and telepathy. So basically, if they want you to do something, you're doing it. The BEK are also known to make the human involved unintentionally or even subconsciously almost start granting their requests. And what I mean is you'll often hear in the retellings of these encounters that the person was subconsciously reaching for, say, the door to open it, only realizing what they're doing at the very last second. And every single time it makes the entity or entities much more angry. So there's been a lot of accounts of black-eyed kids encounters where the person is going, as they're saying no, and knowing in their head they are not going to unlock their front door, say, or open their car door, they'll be reaching for the latch or the doorknob to open it as they're telling themselves they're not going to. The BEK are actually known for that. What's normally reported from the small amount of information that I've been able to gain through witness and victim testimony is that when the white-eyed kids appear in someone's presence, whether it be in their home or a tent in a campground or wherever else they may approach somebody, wherever they should so desire, actually, they do so and then they stare emotionlessly and unblinking at the person. They never speak. They never give away any kind of intent. They never do anything other than stare. The person they are doing this to feels nothing bad or different until, of course, they see the eyes, the all-white eyes. Otherwise, it's just a creepy encounter with some kid. Creepy, though, only because of the unblinking and silent staring. After the initial encounter, the white-eyed kid immediately vanishes pretty much into thin air, and the victim usually feels they're being followed but can't ever see anyone in their midst. And this has been known to last for weeks or even months after the initial encounter. Also, they will find child or teenage-sized handprints on their windows and other surfaces where such things could be seen, like a mirror in the bathroom perhaps, or the window in a camper van. These too vanish quickly, almost as fast as the children themselves. I say children very loosely because most of the time they are of a different age than the BEK. The BEK are known to range from like small toddler to almost adult. The white-eyed kids are usually somewhere between 15 and 17. That's pretty much all you'll ever see. Now, there has been an account or two where there's one that's like 11 or 12, even 14, but it's kind of varying in that age range. You know, what's the difference between 14 and 15 or 16 and 17? So they're in kind of that age group as well. That's very different from the black-eyed kids. There's also been speculation that the white-eyed kids are some kind of harbinger of death, messengers of death, being encountered more often than not before some tragedy or death. What does it all mean? I have no idea yet. The fact is, I just don't know enough yet. While some encounters that I've come across do insist the white-eyed kids were begging to be let in, there's so much more information to the contrary. I believe they have much stronger magic, for lack of a better word. I believe they're better able to use mind control to control humans but yet I've not been able to find a substantiated claim about what exactly it is that they're trying to communicate. Now, I know what you're thinking. When I say, quote, substantiated claim, end quote, you're saying to yourself, how is any of this substantiated, Gems? Right? How? And I know that. I'm just going by what I feel in my gut. Admittedly, I'm no expert on this, but I think I'm onto something here. The term white-eyed kid, in my opinion, is a bit misleading because, like I said, they're not really little kids. They're teenagers. We should call them wets, white-eyed teens. What do you say? Let's start a movement. They're no longer WEKs or white-eyed kids. I'm going to call them wets, white-eyed teens. You with me? So if I'm right, and the white-eyed kid's brain works the same way as humans, then perhaps they are more intelligent than their counterparts because of this. After all, nobody's given any awards to the black-eyed kids for their vocabulary, vernacular, or communication skills, right? So that's for damn sure. You guys know that. They say the weirdest things. Can I use your telegraph? Is it food time? You guys know the issues with them and their vocabulary there. So they're not winning any spelling bees, right? But the white-eyed kids, it's different. They seem to be more intelligent. They don't speak, and people who have encountered them can't remember them communicating anything. They can remember that they were communicating something, but they don't remember what it is. But they don't remember also, like, that it was any kind of broken language or something. They understood exactly what the white-eyed kids were communicating to them at the time they were communicating it. Does this make sense? Are y'all following me? I have a pretty good point here when I say, although the white-eyed kids don't seem to ever speak, it's not really that though, is it? They do speak, just not with their mouths. Their voices will penetrate their victims' brains. And I still haven't been able to find a single believable retelling though, where I can figure out what they are saying in these communications. What is their purpose? What is their intent? I just don't know yet. This is what led me to thinking perhaps they are connected with the missing phenomenon somehow. Now, understand, as I'm sure most of you do, I am not saying in any way that they are responsible for all or even a large part of these strange and mysterious vanishings in the woods, right? Just like I don't think that about the Fae either, though. I don't think it about the Glimmerman. I don't think it about a serial killer. I don't think any one entity or thing is responsible for all of what's going on with the missing phenomenon. But all of them collectively, or most likely, more likely separately, I think do play a part in one or the other missing persons case. I don't think they're working together, but do I think they're aware and conscious of each other? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case. Could this be one of the missing pieces? Let's discuss how they could be responsible and what their part may be. So there's a story floating around out there on the internet, and remember, it's all alleged and your decision to make if you're going to believe the person who tells the story or not. I choose to believe most of the paranormal stories of encounters and retellings that I come across within reason, and I try to use my own reason and knowledge when making that decision. Also, if you're here, it's probably because you have an open mind and are willing to hear me out. At least that's my hope. So there's this story of an encounter going around of how a man and a woman were camping in or near the Great Smoky Mountains. They took a kayak out on the water, they hiked, they built a campfire. They were a young couple right out of high school, if I remember correctly, and they were out for a nice and possibly kind of romantic time in nature. If I remember correctly how the story was told, it was actually the girl that was 19 and the boy, the man, was 21. So they say they were having a perfectly normal, fantastic time, actually. They set up a tent in their camping area. They went to sleep for the night. The young girl reported that all day that first day, no matter how much she tried to shake it, she had the feeling that she and her boyfriend were being watched. She decided not to say anything to him because I guess she didn't want to ruin the mood. When they went to lay down in the tent, however, all the hairs on the back of her neck stood up and she felt as though someone were right outside of the tent, just standing there, listening, lurking. At this point, she was scared enough that she finally told her boyfriend, and he explained that he too had felt the exact same feeling all day long of being watched that he could not shake, but he didn't want to tell her because he didn't want to scare her and then ruin the mood. I believe the way the young man told it to her was that he had felt a, quote, presence, end quote, all day long. The entire time, as though there was someone or something out there with them that they just couldn't see but could somehow sense. He stayed quiet, again, not wanting to scare her. So while the BEK invoke this kind of primal dread, do the white-eyed kids just bring up and open up all of your primal senses so that you have like this knowledge of them? Or do they purposely make you have knowledge of them to get scared and prepare for the encounter? I don't know yet. So the couple, after sharing these feelings with each other, talked for a little while inside the tent about how empty the camp seemed to be. No other campers were within sight or earshot, and come to think of it, they hadn't seen anyone else the entire time they'd been there. As the night wore on, despite the creeping feeling tingling in their spine, they somehow managed to fall asleep. One of them, I believe it was the woman, but I can't be sure because I can't find the story anymore. I read it a few weeks ago and now it's gone. Let's say it was her for the sake of the story. She stepped behind a tree to do her business and started back to the tent, which was about a yard or two away. Don't want the scent of urine to attract too much wildlife right next to the tent, I guess. This is when she says she heard the sound of a twig snapping on the ground right behind her. It was as though it were under someone's foot. Someone was walking right behind her. She tried not to turn around and to just walk faster and directly to the tent. By the time she got there, she was almost in a run and crying. All of the small hairs on her body standing straight up on end. Her heart raced. She turned around as she ran, but saw nothing. Her boyfriend had woken up, and when she wasn't there, he stepped out of the tent and was about to go and look for her, but she came crashing into him. When he saw how shaken up she was, he asked her what was wrong. She told him she definitely heard someone following her in the woods. They went and searched the area with flashlights, but saw no one and saw no sign of anyone having been there. They went back to the tent, but neither got much sleep that night. So according to the rest of the story, the next morning at dawn, the woman stepped out of her tent yet again, and immediately she heard a small voice. But she didn't exactly hear it per se. It was in her head, but it wasn't her voice. It was kind of in her mind's eye. The voice was telling her to, quote, come, end quote. It was soft and inviting and even pleasant. It also seemed, as she recalled later on but didn't notice in the moment, that it was putting her in a kind of trance. It was as though she couldn't resist the urge to go to it. She followed the voice, and suddenly there it was. Standing directly in front of her was another young woman, about the same height and weight, blonde hair just like hers, but maybe a few years younger. She didn't know how she knew that, as the other young woman was wearing a cloak with the hood up, and since she was looking down, she couldn't really see her face. They had a sort of strange conversation, seeming like the girl in the red cloak was trying to somehow convince her not to be scared and that they were the same. Why would she feel the need to do this? Because she wasn't human. When the girl with the cloak looked up, she had all white eyes. When we think of the BEK and their inky, dark eyes as black as an abyss, we think of how evil they are. But please make no mistake. When you think of their light-eyed counterpart, do not for a second think the opposite. There was nothing light or good in the stare, and it was a stare too. This cloaked girl simply stared into the eyes of the young woman with a kind of sick and twisted smile on her face. Not a pleasant and happy smile, mind you. The girl found she couldn't look away, and she couldn't even blink. They sat and stared for about 2 minutes, although I'm sure it seemed like an eternity. All the while, the girl heard a strange humming in her mind's eye, like a vibration or pulsating, which was just starting to hurt her brain really bad. All of a sudden, the cloaked girl broke eye contact, and the young woman was able to blink again. When she opened her eyes, she saw that, as fast as it took her to blink, the cloaked girl was gone. The young woman was almost incapacitated with fear and had a massive migraine headache. She remembers being completely disoriented and confused, unable to make her way back to the campground and her boyfriend. Actually, she claimed she didn't even remember where she was or where she was supposed to be going in the first place. She started to just wander around the woods, and she came across a berry patch. Just as she was about to pick and eat them, allegedly, her boyfriend found her. She was unable to remember or explain what had happened to her for months. When she did, people obviously found it hard to believe her. And, I don't blame them. I mean, white-eyed kids, black-eyed kids, if you're not in this community and, you just may not believe something like that. And maybe this is why I can no longer find the story. As I've learned from experience, very recent experience, people on the internet who hide behind their keyboards can be very, very cruel. A lot different than when they're saying something to your face or saying something to you which they won't say to your face. Ever. So anyways, maybe that's why the girl took the video or the story down, because she was sick of being taunted by grown-ass adult bullies. I know that when I read it, I thought it was a few weeks ago, but thinking back, it was before I had ever heard of the white-eyed kids. So it had to have been like 5-6 months ago, actually. And don't ask me where I saw it either. I just know it was there. I took little notes on it because I was like, what's this, white-eyed kids? And then I was like, oh, that was a fluke. That was like a one-off, somebody making up a story, until recently you guys have been bringing to my attention these white-eyed kid encounters, So I went back through my notes and I was like, whoa, I have something on that. Let me get it, make sure I have the notes correct, make sure I have the story correct, fill in the blanks, and I just couldn't find it. I couldn't help but immediately be struck by a few things about her story, though. The confusion and disorientation, not remembering where to go and what to do, not remembering anything at all, and wandering aimlessly around the woods. I believe in this encounter. Could the white-eyed kids and the Fae somehow be working in tandem, one leading a helpless and lone human to the other? With the Fae, I can at least make an educated guess what their goal is, depending upon the description given by the victim, and depending upon the species, what I've learned from my extensive research. But the white-eyed kids, what did it want? What was its purpose here? The young woman from the campsite said the more time passed, the more she started to forget her encounter, which is why she decided to tell it publicly in the paranormal community in the first place. So she didn't forget. How many people have had encounters like this and forgot, either immediately or a little while after the fact? I don't have answers and haven't been able to make too many connections yet, but I promise I'm working on it. I guess you'll just have to stay tuned. Let me know in the comments what you think. I promise I have more research. I'm not just going to leave you hanging. You know, your girl would never do that. But I wanted to get this video out just to give you guys a little taste. I've been promising you that I would share some of my connections that I'm making, and this is just one or two. You guys know how I do with my deep dive, so don't worry. There's plenty more coming. Guys, be sure and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, if you enjoyed coming and spending this time with me. I really love spending this time with you and talking about the paranormal. You know, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, one of my favorite subjects, the overall of the paranormal. And I love that my subscribers love it as much as I do. I just want to say thank you guys so much. I hit 1,000 subscribers. This is awesome. And also thank you so much for all of the congratulations and outpouring of love that you guys have given me since I've hit 1,000 subscribers a couple of days ago. You guys know that was a huge long-term goal of mine that I finally reached 1 year and 1 week after I started this channel. So 53 weeks later, and I did it. Thanks, guys. Just got to work on those view hours. I think I need like 1,000 more, which should be fine. Then I can do live streams now. Anyways, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. I'm sure if you like this video, you will find some that have way more information on other paranormal subjects that you may or may not have heard about before. And always be sure to leave your opinion in the comments, or just drop me a comment. I really love reading and discussing in the comments with you guys. I don't always get back right away, but I try really hard to get to every single comment. You'll know I read your comment because you'll get a like and a heart. I like and heart every single comment that I read. Obviously, as long as you're not a troll. Share this video, share the love, right? Spread the word about white-eyed kids. Let people know when they're in the woods, there is now another paranormal phenomenon going on, another entity that they need to keep an eye out for. You know, last year around this time, it was the Glimmer Man was just coming out. And don't get me wrong, he's still there. And I still have a lot more research to do on him because I encountered one personally. Guys, that's all I have for tonight. I love you so much. Be sure and check out the description box for the 3 live streams Steve Stockton and I do every week from 8 to 9 Eastern time on Dezombified's channel on Wednesday nights. We do Real Evil. Campfire Tales on Friday nights on Missing Persons and Mysteries from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. and Fireside Chat from 7 to 8 p.m. on Sunday nights. Also in the description box, you'll find information for how to donate through my PayPal or my Patreon to become a patron or make the one-time donation through PayPal. Have your best day. Have your best night. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Can gain you so much. And as Kenny Dreadful from Dezombified said, and I absolutely loved it, you know, if I'm not your cup of tea, go find another cup of tea. You don't have to let me know in the comments. So bye-bye to you. And go with grace, everybody. And just go with grace. Be decent. Mwah. Bye-bye.